morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here again in Delhi. I'm having a chance to renew some old acquaintances, some old friendships. It's been a while since I've been here, but it's always a pleasure to come to talk to people who are enthusiastic about quality. And that is very, very important. It doesn't matter what culture we come from, what country we're based in, what language we speak. We are all here today on a Saturday morning because we have a common interest, and that common interest is quality. My objective this morning is to give you some insights into the new ISO 9001:2015 standard. It's not a training course. It's not intended to go through clause by clause the requirements of the new ISO 9001 standard. What it is intended to do is to give you a little bit of background as to why we're changing, what do we want to achieve, what are the outcomes that we hope to get out of the new ISO 9001:15 standard. Now, before I start, I'd like to make a plea. Please, can we stop talking about compliance to ISO 9001? ISO 9001 is not a law. It's not a technical regulation. There is a very subtle difference in the word compliance and the word conformity. ISO 9001 provides a set of requirements that are together a voluntary standard. ISO 9001 in some cases forms the basis for technical regulations. It forms the basis for legal requirements. But in and of itself, ISO 9001 is not obligatory. You don't have to do it. As Dr. Deming used to say, you don't have to do any of this because survival is not compulsory. But the reason I make that comment is because we should be implementing a quality management system because it makes sense to do that. Because it will help an organization and the entire supply chain to be able to provide confidence in their ability to do things right. Compliance implies that I'm going to do this because I have to, and if I don't, I will be punished. That is not the case of ISO 9001. Conformity implies in the English language. This is something that makes sense to me. It's a set of values and a set of beliefs which I can buy into, and I will do it because it will make sense. And I think, as Dr. Singh mentioned, we're talking about a journey. We're talking about a journey from organizations that maybe have very little awareness of quality and quality management, who will take the first steps, and probably one of the first steps that they will take, hopefully when they are prepared to do that, will be looking for certification for ISO 9001. That was never the intention way back in 1987 when we published the standard for the first time. The intention was that organizations would use ISO 9004, the guideline standard for good practices in quality management, to implement a quality management system, and then, if they needed to demonstrate their competence to anybody, they would choose to seek evidence of conformity to the ISO 9001 requirements standard. Now, that never really worked. It was a nice idea, and it continues to be a nice idea, but the reality is that most organizations today, one of their first stimulating factors to make them think about quality is because they need a certification in order to be allowed to participate in particular markets. And so that has changed to some extent our thinking within ISO. Yes, we have to recognize the realities of the market. We want to encourage people not to just comply with an ISO 9001 standard or conform to that standard. We want to encourage them to go beyond it. We can't require them to go beyond what ISO 9001 requires as a basis for certification, but we can stimulate that. We can stimulate people to look at how to do things better, how to do things more efficiently, how to look beyond just product quality management into the bigger world of sustainability issues, environmental, health and safety, social issues, and so on. So that's going to be the main theme of my talk today. What we're talking about essentially with the new version of the standard is evolution, not revolution. The first standards were published, as you know, in 1987, and there was a minor revision in the year 1994. We had a major revision to 9001 in the year 2000, where we addressed this idea of the process approach, moving away from that prescriptive 20-clause set of requirements for documented procedures and records and so on, moving towards more process-based thinking. In the year 2008, we made some very minor adjustments and revisions, and now we are in the final stages of preparation for the 2015 revision. And it's actually quite frightening if you look at the life cycle there. We're looking at a forecast lifespan up until around about 2030. That's not because we're slow and very bureaucratic within ISO. We don't revise the ISO 9001 standards for a very good reason, with great frequency. We could probably do it every 1 or 2 years, but we would drive everybody in the world crazy, because there are so many people, so many interested parties in ISO 9001. Not only the 1.2 million organizations around the world who are certified, and their internal auditors, and their people who need to be made aware of any changes. We also have the sector standards that are based on ISO 9001. The automotive, the aerospace, the telecom standards, the oil and gas standards, and so on. We have regulations, technical regulations that depend on ISO 9001. And so we can't go just tinkering with the requirements of the standard because of the very severe implications of any changes that we make. I went to get a bottle of water because I want to make a point, not just because I'm thirsty. I am thirsty. But one of the basic tenets of the new ISO 9001 standard is what we call risk-based thinking. And we're having a big promotional campaign within ISO 9000, within TC 176, to say that does not necessarily mean a formal risk management approach. Risk-based thinking means this. It means recognizing that an open bottle of water and a laptop computer and a clumsy guy called Nigel Croft is a recipe for something to go wrong. For Nigel to get enthusiastic and wave my arms about and knock the water over my computer and something bad will happen. That does not involve a formal risk assessment, failure mode and effect analysis. In a different context, it may need that more formal approach. If I'm manufacturing aerospace components or critical components for a gas pipeline or some medical components, then maybe I need to take a more formal approach. But let's remember that ISO 9001 is a very, very generic standard. ISO's mission, let's never forget this, and I think this is relevant to what I said at the beginning. ISO develops high-quality, voluntary international standards to facilitate the international exchange of goods and services, support sustainable and equitable economic growth, promote innovation, not stifle innovation. It makes me very sad when I hear organizations say, oh, I can't innovate, I can't do things differently because my ISO system won't let me. That's nonsense. The ISO management system is there as a tool for you to be able to operate your organization to be effective and to achieve its objectives. It shouldn't be a set of handcuffs that you ball and chain around your foot that means that you can't ever change anything. So that question of sustainability will permeate throughout the rest of my in ISO, the technical work is done by technical or project committees, and when we talk about TC 176, it means nothing more, nothing less than technical committee number 176 for quality management and quality assurance. So my technical subcommittee is the one responsible for ISO 9001, ISO 9004, among others. When we talk about a subcommittee, very often people think about half a dozen people sitting in a room. Subcommittee 2 of ISO TC 176 actually has about 190 members from something like 78 different countries around the world. Some of you who are here today, I know, have participated and do actively participate on behalf of Thomas, on behalf of Germany, and other people here on behalf of India. India is the represented in ISO by BIS. So our mission within Subcommittee 2 of ISO TC 176, the first item of our mission says nothing about requirements. It says nothing about certification. It says that our mission is to develop, maintain and support a portfolio of products, standards, guidance documents, web-based support information that will enable organizations to improve their performance and to benefit from the implementation of a robust quality management system. The second part, of course, is to establish a generic quality management system requirements that provide the foundations to build confidence. Very important word, confidence, in the goods and services that are delivered throughout the supply chain to organizations and to people worldwide, and to provide support when needed, not to take that arrogant approach that, oh, we just write the standard and, you know, the dirty business of implementing the requirements and certifying the requirements, that's somebody else's job. No, it's ISO's job, it's ISO's brand that it is at stake here. And so ISO has been taking a much more proactive approach together with organizations organisations like NABCB here in India through the International Accreditation Forum to ensure that our standard is used in the way in which it was intended, to help organisations and supply chains throughout the world to benefit. Now, you remember the ISO mission talks about sustainable development. And I think all of us can have that dream of a sustainable future. Economic growth, environmental integrity, social responsibility. But just dreaming is not enough. As Dr. Deming used to say, how could there be life without aims and hopes? Everyone has their aims and hopes and dreams and plans. But a goal that lies beyond the means of accomplishment will only lead to discouragement, frustration, and demoralization. In other words, there must always be a method in order to achieve an aim or an objective. By what method? Now, I'm sure many of you will recognize the iconic figure there of Dr. Deming. This was taken when he was, I think, about 91 years old, just before his death. Some of you may have a little bit more difficulty in recognizing this young, slim guy with quite a bit more hair and not such grey features here. But I had the honour of being one of Dr. Deming's willing workers during one of his seminars more than 25 years ago. So, by what method can we achieve sustainable development? Now, I'm biased, of course, but I believe that the method is a management system. A management system is the system, the set of interacting processes that help us to establish policy and objectives, in other words, where we want to go, and to enable us to systematically achieve those objectives. In other words, results focused. What we're talking about with ISO 9001 is the way we manage our business to give us confidence in our ability to consistently produce conforming products. ISO 14001, confidence in our ability to work in an environmentally friendly way, preventing pollution meeting compliance requirements and continually improving, and so on. So when we talk about a management system, we're essentially talking about that interaction of these elements: people, methods, hardware. In other words, the hardware, software, and humanware that interact within processes to help us to achieve our objectives. So what we're looking at is a documented system, not a system of documents. The system shouldn't be carved in stone. One of the concepts that we talked about a lot in preparation for this new revision of ISO 9001 was the organizational agility, the ability to respond quickly to opportunities and to risks as they arise and as they change in an ever-changing business context. We looked at cause and effect. We recognise, and most of you recognise, all of these important things and many, many more in achieving a good quality management system. So, of course, we need committed top management, and we need some documented procedures and competent people, and so on and so on. But the effectiveness of the quality management principle, quality management system, will not be measured by how pretty is the quality manual, or how many documented procedures, or how many hours of training you spend per person per year. It will be measured by the performance. Is that system, the way in which all of that is managed, is it providing confidence in the products and services that the organisation is providing? And likewise for environmental management. Now, there are three core concepts in the new ISO 9001 standard. This is my understanding, but I think if you look at the new standard, you will see this very, very clearly. There is no single concept that predominates. These are three things that, taken together, will allow an organisation to develop a robust quality management system. First of all, identify the processes that are needed to achieve the planned results. Look at your business. No two businesses are identical. The processes that are important to achieve conforming products may be different from the processes that you need in order to have good environmental performance, or the processes that you need to focus attention for health and safety management or energy management and so on. Now, in a holistic system, you will be looking at all of those processes and deciding which ones of those are most critical, prioritizing based on what, prioritizing based on risk. To what extent does that process affect your ability to achieve your objectives? It's not black or white. It's various shades of grey. I don't know if it's 50 shades of grey or more shades of grey, but there are many, many shades of grey from those processes that directly have an impact on your product quality, or directly have an impact on environmental performance, to those where maybe there is some influence, but it's less direct. And that affects the way that you should be managing those processes. The amount of effort, the amount of resources, the amount of training, the amount of planning and documentation that you need in order to carry out those processes. And then thirdly, PDCA. Manage the processes and manage the system using the plan, do, check, act cycle. I like to keep this very simple. It's very easy to complicate things, but let's keep it nice and simple. Plan what to do and how to do it. Then we try to do what was planned. We will continually check, did things happen according to plan? Some things may be within our control, some things may be outside of our control. One of the key words in the new ISO 9001:2015 standard is organizational context. The context, the business context in which we operate may change. So the strategic planning that we've done, if we're in the oil and gas industry and we've done all our strategic planning on our investments of new equipment and so on, based on oil prices pushing $150 a barrel. When the oil price drops, of course, we can't change that. It's the context in which we operate, but we have to adapt to that change in the way that we prioritize our investments and so on. And then finally, the act part, not just correcting what went wrong, but going through a sequence of questions, how to improve next time. One of the key changes, and it's actually not such a subtle change, is that this whole question of prevention and preventive action, which in the current version of ISO 9001 is the very last clause. How crazy can that be? The very last clause of the standard talks about preventing things from going wrong. That's the entire objective of ISO 9001. Identifying risks, mitigating risks. So that idea of preventive action has now gone out of the final part of ISO 9001, and it's now right up front in the planning stages of the plan, do, check, act cycle, identifying things that could potentially go wrong and taking actions to mitigate them from going wrong. So that preventive thinking comes out of ACT. It comes out of the act of the plan, do, check, act cycle. Because if we think about it, if we are effective in identifying the risks and mitigating the risks, then we shouldn't have anything go wrong in the first place. So the ACT part of the plan, do, check, act cycle now looks at, first thing, containing a problem. If we have a problem, let's contain it. So if you have, for example, an outbreak of hospital-acquired infection, first of all, isolate the patients, put them in an isolation ward, contain the problem as much as you can. Then look at correcting it, look at treating those patients, getting them to recover from that acquired infection, and then look at the corrective actions. Why? Why did this happen? What were the factors? What's the root cause? And what actions can we take to stop it from happening again? So contain, correct, identify the causes, take corrective action. And then finally, let's not just stop fine. Maybe everything is working wonderfully well. But we should always be asking the question, how can we do it better? How can we improve, not just by small step continual improvement, but if necessary by breakthrough improvement, by re-engineering processes, by innovation. And so there is a myth out there somehow that ISO 9001 has abandoned continual improvement because we no longer call that clause continual improvement, it's called improvement. And the reason for that is continual improvement, Kaizen, is one part of one possible way of achieving improvement. But let's not forget about things like innovation and breakthrough improvement as well. If we look at a generic process, this is just to bring all of this together. Any generic process has its inputs, which may be in the form of materials, energy, information, and so on, has the desired outputs, which are delivered to the internal or the external customer. Something else that's been introduced into ISO 9001 is the idea of the fact that there may be other interested parties. Remember that when ISO 9001 was first published in 1987, it was aimed very much at the business-to-business manufacturing context. Well, when we look at, for example, a school or a university or a hospital, then it's not always an easy question to say who is the customer. There may be other customers, there may be other interested parties, each with their own very relevant needs and expectations regarding the service and product that institution is providing. We also need to look at undesired outputs. ISO 9001 doesn't focus on undesired outputs, but it is totally compatible with the concept of lean-based management. What is lean? It's driving out non-value-adding activities within a process. And so we're not competing. ISO 9001 is not competing with Lean Six Sigma approaches, with quality excellence approaches. But it equally is not incompatible form a sound basis, a sound disciplined structure on which we can look at processes and we can identify non-value adding activities. So we need to think about how to carry out that process. The extent of planning will depend on the risk. We need to think about what is the impact, what is the effect of that process on things like product quality, environmental aspects and impacts, the social implications, energy usage, and so on and so on. And we can monitor and measure each of those things before, during, and after the process. If we put all of that together, what have we got? We've got a process approach, that process-based thinking, coupled with risk-based prioritization, and on top of that, planning the process, carrying out the process, checking the process, and continually improving the process. So ISO 9001:2015 is all of those things put together. Now we know it's not as simple as one single process. We know that we have to look at the system of interacting processes and not only manage each individual process, but manage the system as a whole. And that's where the challenges come in. Some organizations are very, very complex in terms of their systems of business processes. For the second part of the talk, I'd like to talk a little bit about the harmonization of management system standards. It's amazing sometimes when we look and plot out and see how many different management systems standards there are around today. I'm not going to go into this in any detail, but I did just try to map out a little bit. You know, starting with ISO 9001 in the economic domain, we've got the various sector standards based on ISO 9001. We've got the environmental management system standards. Some standards down here that are not exactly management system standards, but never mind. We've got the health and safety management system, OSHA 18001, which will become an ISO 45001 management system standard. All of these are about 7 or 8 years back, ISO came to the technical committees and said, wait a minute, guys, we are the International Organization for Standardization, and we've got all these management system standards, and they're not standardized. So we need to get our acts together, and the ISO Technical Management Board set up this joint technical coordination group to establish a joint vision for all management system standards within ISO, identical sequence, identical look, touch, feel of the management system, vocabulary and so on, with the aim of making life easier for those organizations who wish to have a single management system that covers all of the different contexts. I'm getting conflicting information here. First of all, they asked me if I would speak for longer than was originally planned. Now they're telling me I've only got 2 minutes left. So I will take the medium term, and I probably need about another 10 minutes, if that's okay, which will put me around about, I think around about 35 minutes, which is what I'd prepared for. Since we actually started a little bit late. Okay. All of that led to the ISO directives, what's called the Annex SL, which was nothing more than the recommendations of that joint technical coordination group work, which comes up with a common text, a common sequence, and a common clause structure. That has had a significant effect on the revisions of ISO 9001. This is the high-level structure. Some of these things I've already touched on, and I will expand on a little bit more. The things that are here in red. The first requirement of the new ISO 9001 standard, same as the first requirement of the new ISO 14001 standard, understand the context in which your business works. Is it a highly critical aerospace manufacturing business, or is it a small corner shop selling office supplies and photocopying services? Very, very different contexts. Needs and expectations of interested parties, not only the customer, of course, the direct customer continues to be the key interested party. Leadership and commitment, not just top management, but throughout the whole of the organization. organisation. From top management providing support to the middle management levels where we know we've had problems in the past, driving that right down to the first level of supervision within the organisation. And actions to address risks and opportunities as the very first item in the planning process. Reinforcing the idea, the concept of preventive action, though we intentionally do not use that phrase anymore. There is no longer the phrase preventive action in ISO 9001. So what we now have is a very clear, structured matrix approach to all of ISO's management system standards, where we start with the core structure and format, the Annex SL, that is applicable to ISO 9000, 14000, health and safety, and so on. Each sector can then add on in a matrix way their own requirements, and if necessary, each organisation within that sector can add on their requirements. So we get a harmonised, logical approach. The basis for ISO 9001, if somebody asks you, what is ISO 9001 about? Please don't say, well, it requires a documented procedure for us to define how we carry out corrective actions, and we have to do this and this. And otherwise, people's eyes will glaze over. This is what ISO 9001 is about. These are the quality management principles that incidentally the group I had responsible for coordinating this, led by Professor Yoshinori Izuka from Tokyo University, extremely well respected, a winner of the Deming Individual Quality Award in 2010. This is the basis for ISO 9001. Here are some changes that you will see that will become apparent when you pick up the new standard. First, you will see it looks different because it's been reformatted to align with Annex SL. Please don't say, oh no, now I have to change all my quality manual to align with the clause structure of the new standard. You don't have to do that. You never had to do that. And incidentally, ISO 9001 2015 doesn't require you to have a quality manual. We talk about products and services instead of product. Why? Well, ISO 9001 in the current version says services are a particular kind of product. But many people in the service sector, the penny hasn't dropped. They haven't got the message. So at the risk of being repetitive, we use that phrase, products and services, throughout the standard to emphasize that this applies to the intangible components. More requirements for top and other levels of management. There is a new requirement, very specific in ISO 9001. Top management shall be accountable for the performance of the quality management system. Oh, well, no, that's the responsibility of the management representative. No, sir. There is no longer a requirement for a management representative. So live with that. Quality is the responsibility of everybody. There still has to be responsibilities defined for coordinating the quality management system, but it doesn't have to be a single person. We've amalgamated the parts of the outsourced processes together with purchasing and we talk about documented information instead of documented procedures and records. For me, that is an insignificant change. It doesn't mean you have to change all your terminology in your management system. Some new requirements. The context of the organization I spoke about already. Identification of the interested parties. Actions to identify and address risks and opportunities. We know that this will bring some challenges, and we already have a guidance document available on the ISO website. We've introduced new requirements for organizational knowledge, the ability to learn from past experiences, and there is now a requirement in the standard to identify the need for actions to minimize human error. There are some deleted requirements. We've eliminated the term preventive action, but I hope you don't go away with the idea that ISO 9001 no longer requires preventive action. It requires requires the identification of risks and the mitigation of risks right up front at the beginning of the standard. And we've eliminated some of those prescriptive requirements. In terms of implementation guidance, there is an annex in ISO 9001 that provides some clarification of what we've done and why we've done it. We also have work underway to develop generic implementation guidance that will be numbered as ISO Technical Specification 9002, and that draft technical specification is scheduled to be published in the next month or so. We're also updating the so-called Small Business Handbook. In terms of transition, you will have a 3-year transition period. So any BCB will be working with the certification bodies who will be working with certified organizations to try to avoid a peak of audits right at the very end of the transition process. So in conclusion, I hope in this short time available, I've been able to show